although, again, as I said, you may see these 3 points as separate arguments, because I think there is some kind of connection between the 3 of them, as I will make clear by the end of this explanation. Now, when it comes to the way matter has evolved, we find it somewhat less problematic because we are so used to talking about evolution and Darwinian evolution that it seems to be explainable. Well, there are problems also with the theory of evolution. I'm not denying the theory of evolution, and I'm not saying it's not scientific, but some people think that for blind evolution, for fully blind evolution, to give rise to the state of nature as we see it right now, the complexity of the human body, the unbelievable complexity of the human body. Think of its organs, the kidneys, the liver, the stomach, the brain. Then think of the skin, the bones, the biomechanics, the immune system, and everything working in perfect harmony. And then think of the other animal species and the plants. For that to have been the result of a completely blind process, guided only by environmental pressures and this kind of genetic lottery, random genetic mutation, is hard for some people to really accept. Now let me briefly tell you what evolutionary theory says, okay? How evolution proceeds. There are these 2 elements I just mentioned, random genetic mutation and then environmental pressures, or natural selection as it's usually called. So the idea is that our gene pool gives rise to random mutations that remain within the population, and then when at some point those mutations prove beneficial, then it will be the individuals that have inherited those new genetic makeup, that will survive. And that way, evolution will proceed. So just to give you an example, there was a moth, like a little butterfly, in England that used to be like kind of color cream, kind of light cream color, like Joe's shirt or something. But then with the industrialization, the buildings in England became blackened because of soot. And so this moth that used to hide before by blending with the environment, with the color of the buildings back then before the era of industrialization, survived much better from its predators. But now, because of its light color, it's more easily identifiable by its predators, and it can be eaten, killed by the birds or whatever other animals feed on those moths. Now, some of those moths have developed a darker color just by random, and that was like a small minority of that moth population. Now, the other lighter looking moths are being eaten, killed by the predators because they're easier to identify, while the darker looking moths can survive. So now this random genetic mutation that had no meaning before has become the way to survive for the moth population. And therefore, all of these moths are becoming now, or have become by now, dark looking. You see how environmental pressures work? Now apply that principle to everything, and you'll see species developing in different ways depending on what genetic mutations appear to be valuable for coping with the environment. Now, with that process, with that combination of this random genetic mutation, this genetic lottery, and the value of those mutations in response to environmental pressures, we are told that nature has evolved to the point we're at now. Now, some people find that very hard to believe. not that it hasn't happened like that, but it has been a completely blind process. Some mechanisms in the human eye, for example, are complementary. One of the two mechanisms makes no sense, has no value without the other. So it's hard to understand why would one part of this mechanism appear by itself with no practical function, as if waiting for the other part of the mechanism so as to give rise to the human eye as it is now and to our capacity for seeing. So not everything has been resolved in evolutionary theory. This is not to deny evolution and evolutionary theory. But again, one of the problems with evolutionary theory, as with other, what we're going to call them grand theories of the 19th century, such as Marxism, we'll talk about Marxism next, and Freudian psychoanalysis, is that it is too easy to visualize. We get this sketchy notion of how evolution works, and the same will happen with, as I said, with Marxism and with Freudian psychoanalysis. And then it's like we've seen everything. We take it for granted that it's true and that everything has been proven. I'm sure you've seen these posters in which you see first the monkey like this, and then a monkey a little more upward looking, and then third step, the Malibu surfer. Just in 3 simple steps. I actually have one of those postcards here. Oh, do I? Well, I thought I did. I'm sorry. Okay. I don't have that postcard here, as I thought I did. But it's just a postcard that showed the 2 monkeys and then the Malibu surfer. Well, sorry, things don't work like that, okay? Things are not that simple looking. And so there are problems with a completely blind understanding of evolutionary theory. So how does materialism resolve these problems? Well, there is no resolution, really. It's just open questions. There's simply a blank denial that there is anything transcendent, that there is any reality beyond the material world. And so we are left with simply a question mark and the idea that one day science will find out. Now, I'm not happy with that kind of an answer, because science is about the here and now. When you turn science into a faith, into a religion, then it really turns into a superstition, because there is no basis for it. I mean, one day science will find out, or maybe not. Maybe science will never find out, because maybe what there is behind is God. So, in the end, it turns into a faith in science. The problem is, of course, science is not a religion. It's not something to have faith in. Science is about what can be demonstrated here and now. If you put a faith in there, you're turning science into a religion or a superstition. The latest discoveries in physics have turned even people such as Antony Flew. Antony Flew was a major figure Antony, not Anthony. Antony Flew was pretty much the biggest intellectual representative of atheism throughout most of the 20th century. And in the early part of this decade, in the 2004 or so, he surprised the world by making it public that he had changed his mind, that he believes there is a God. And then he published this book, There Is a God. And in it, he explains how, given the unbelievable complexity of the physical world, he can no longer believe that that this is the result of blind forces and that there is no guiding principle at all. Well,